Welcome. This is the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is where you'll learn strategies to help you achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host, Rod Khleif, has owned over 2,000 homes and apartments, and he brings experts in all aspects of real estate investment and management onto the show. Now, here's your host, Rod Khleif.
Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I am thrilled you're here. You guys are going to get a ton of value from the gentlemen we're interviewing today. Their names are Thomas Black, and he's an MD, and Tim Black, and they're with Nepali Capital. Tom is an author, and they have a $70 million portfolio, almost 2,000 doors, and we are going to dig in and find out how they accomplished that. Guys, welcome on the show.
Thank you very much, Rod. Happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to be here. We're streaming from two different locations, Madison, Wisconsin, and Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, so those of you listening on my podcast, we're doing these in a video format now as well, and you can check that out on YouTube or on my website, actually, rodkhleif.com. So you can actually watch it if you don't want to just have us in your ear. Anyway, so let's go back. I always like to kind of get a little bit of history. So one or both of you talk about your background in this business, how you got into real estate, and then, maybe we'll talk about your first deal and really go back a ways, if that's okay.
Sure. No, absolutely. I'll go first because I think it all kind of goes back to right around that 2007, 2008 timeframe. I was finishing up a residency in emergency medicine, and the economy wasn't doing so hot, but I wouldn't have known it because I was working about 110, 120 hours a week. Not knowingly bought my house at the peak of the market up in Indianapolis. And when I left there, I knew we were going to be losing a lot of money if we choose to sell. So I decided to rent it out to another medicine resident that was coming in for a 3-year stint. So it worked out well, and that was really, I just got bitten by this bug of rentals. We moved to Texas. I started buying up a lot of foreclosure homes around the Houston area, and it just got absolutely into my bloodstream. From there, started looking at the tax implications in medicine. I was a junior partner in a democratic practice of physicians, again, working a lot. And when you get 20 doctors in a room trying to make a business decision about the practice, it just became really, really tenuous. And I really enjoyed the entrepreneurial spirit of going out and doing other things. So I actually went in the city there and bought about 3 acres of land and decided to build a small apartment community from ground up on my own. Fortunately, it worked out really, really well. I partnered.
Now, where was this and how big was it?
So it was in Longview, Texas, so about 3 hours east of Dallas.
Okay.
And we had originally built for 20 units, but for many other reasons with the city, et cetera, and fire code, we ended up going down to 16. Okay. So those 16 units felt like about 1,600 units when I was going through it. It took us about 18 months to complete it. Designed, built, ground up, stabilized, did all the leasing, everything myself.
Wow.
And my business partner. And was fortunate at that time. This is about 2011, I guess. We 1031 and sold that. At the time that oil was doing really, really well, we sold right at the peak. Oil crashed. Longview is a very, very strong oil market. It didn't do so well. So we made out pretty well. We bought some triple net lease industrial buildings, which we still hold today. And after that happened, I couldn't stand working nights in the hospital and seeing patient after patient and getting dictated to by, large private equity firms and hospital groups that were squeezing compensation from physicians at the same time working more. It's that same old private equity story. Less you want to drive labor, you reduce labor costs, you decrease expenses, and you drive revenue. Well, it just became apparent to me that I'm just another cog in the wheel. And I resigned my partnership and moved to Dallas to really start going after real estate pretty aggressively. And then that's when I started writing the book too.
Okay. Yeah, and you mentioned you've got a book titled Passive Income. Actually, I'm mutilating the title. Please.
Looking.
There it is. The Passive Income Physician. All right. Yeah. Surviving a Career Crisis. And I know that you work with a lot of physicians, which is fantastic because talk about a great source of investors for this business. There's really no better. So you're perfectly positioned. It sounds like you've capitalized on that, which is fantastic.
And when you show them the tax benefits, the
sure.
The ability to leverage the non-recourse debt. I mean, it just, as physicians, you're not taught financial literacy, really not.
Right.
You tend to go to a wealth advisor. You pay somebody else. You don't know what your mutual funds are doing. You have no clue. I mean,
I've heard tons of horror stories about physicians that have tried to get into this business and they did it themselves. They tried to dabble and they get crushed. Yeah, they get crushed, as you know. Now, you guys are obviously very sophisticated operators, so that's a real appeal. And of course, your network is fantastic to capitalize on for this business. So your first deal was actually a ground up deal. That's brave.
Yeah,
That's
it
good
was.
For you.
And Tim will share you a little bit about that experience. I went in East Texas. I bought a big red truck jacked up with 38-inch tires. He came out to visit me, and I'll let him tell the story, but he thought I was absolutely nuts. But one thing I do whenever I get involved with things, I go, jump into the deep end head first.
All in.
Yeah, I will not let anything define me on that regard. And looking back, apparently I wasn't supposed to ever be in medicine. I mean, I look at it and I laugh. It's been a great transition, but yeah, pretty funny. But Tim, you can kind of go into that.
Yeah. And so, my path is uniquely very different, where Tom, had his hands on or inside people's bodies in emergency situations. I actually spent 32-year career in entertainment and hospitality, strictly in operations. The last 12 years of my career, I was the chief operating officer for a large resort company in North America. So I've built operational organization structures most of my career. And that's really what excites me about this business, is that we're building a brand and putting some really strong foundational pieces and building blocks behind it to make the experience for the investor different, interesting, and unique. So I spent 12 years in real estate development, developing hotels and resorts. Not exactly multifamily and commercial, but there's a lot of similarities there. And to Tom's point, I visited him probably in 2010, and I needed a crane to get me up in his truck. They have those giant vehicles out in East Texas, and so I finally got up there, and he took me out to this piece of property and said, "I'm going to build an apartment complex here." And Tom has 4 kids, so he's a very busy guy. And I mean, I looked at him and I said, "Do you need your head examined?" And he kind of looked at me and said, No, I'm going to build it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So it's been an interesting story. Needless to say, our career paths are very different, but what's been unique is that his experience and mine have blended. And I think if you talk to our investors, they're going to tell you that we're very different, unique, and we're pretty excited about some of the things that we're doing.
In this business, the most successful partnerships that I see are a combination of you, Tim, the analytical operations person, versus the outgoing face of the organization that's out there doing the relationship building. And that's a match made in heaven. And guys, those of you listening or watching, if you're the analytical person and you're the introvert and you love the numbers, and I'm not saying that you're an introvert, Tim, but this is typical in an analytical person.
Sure.
Is they're not the more outgoing ones. There's typically the outgoing person, and then there's the analytical person. And Tom, you might be an anomaly, because to be a physician, requires a lot of analysis and a lot of study. But
Right.
Typically that matchup, those two personalities, are just fantastic in this business because both are required. You have to be out there developing relationships with brokers, with lenders, with investors, with partners, and somebody has to be checking off all the boxes and doing the financial analysis. So, I've interviewed quite a few groups like you guys that have been very, very successful because of that dynamic. And I think a big piece is that dynamic, is that synergy. Would you agree?
It's for sure. And we talk about this a lot, and that Tom is the passive income physician. He's the face of Nepali Capital. There's no question about it. And we joke a little bit that he's Dorothy, and I'm the Wizard of Oz, kind of behind the curtain. He's definitely the good-looking face of the company, and it works really well. I think you nailed it.
Well, let's talk about how you guys got started. I mean, were you both in on that first ground up deal, or was that just you,
No, not
Tom?
at all. So that was just me.
Okay.
Did that with one business partner who was a custom home builder for 20 years or so. And so
it's a great partnership. So he built it. Perfect. Yeah. All right.
He built it. You just say, you go do this. And he didn't like the numbers. He didn't like any sort of that. He didn't like dealing with it. So he was fixated on that. and then I drive the numbers. And that's where my foundation came.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't until I left the practice and I moved to Dallas and I started getting more into the, what syndication was and what private placement was and things like that. And I had done, 2 or 3 pretty large deals. I think my first big deal, I had found a couple of guys that I was partnered with
let's talk about that first deal, a little bit of detail, if you don't mind.
Sure. So it was in Arlington, Texas. Bought right around a 7.5, fortunately maybe an 8 cap or so.
Okay, when was this?
This was December of 2015.
Okay.
We were lucky. Off-market deal, out-of-state owner. And yeah, it scared the heck out of me. I mean, 305 units, a little less than $13 million deal. Was bigger than anything, obviously, I'd done before.
That was your first deal after the 20-unit ground up?
First deal.
305 units?
Yep, I told you, I go big time.
Now, those are some stones there. All right, good job. All right, so 13.5 million,
in
Arlington, Texas. Wow.
It took us, it was a $3.2 million raise, and I'll never forget, we put the documents out on October at Halloween, to October 31st, 2015.
So 3.2 million equity raise. Okay.
In 96 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you had a portfolio of physicians that wanted more than the grind in the emergency room. Right.
They had seen me progress, and this was a number of years, obviously, 4 years of still buying single family homes, doing little things on the side. But when I decided, hey, we're moving to Dallas, we've got to make a run at this. And I'm still engaged clinically. I run a hospital system of 8 hospitals.
Today.
Yeah, wow. I run the practice, which is it's more so your business administration. I still work clinically about 1 day a week, somewhere in there, just to keep my foot in the door and kind of to get that sense of legitimacy.
Wow. Well, it also is very helpful from an income standpoint when you're out there initially trying to borrow money, to have an income stream.
Right. Never give up your day job till that.
Thank you, guys. I hope you all heard that. Don't give up. And I get this question all the time. Should I quit and jump into this full time? And the answer is always hell no. Keep your day job and do this on the side. Yep. Now, let me ask you this. 305 units. Obviously, you didn't have the experience level that you needed to satisfy that initial lender. How did you overcome that hurdle?
We had, I want to count maybe 28 to 30 different KPs on the deal.
Okay.
My net worth obviously wasn't something that was going to get that done, nor my liquidity.
Okay.
I even for the and this is how crazy this goes. Even for the hard money that we had and going through the process, even the application fees, I was pretty strapped. I mean, I was out there a good amount of money, so there's a lot of sleepless nights that I convinced somebody that I put my personal guarantee and had them write a loan, and I gave them an interest based on the amount that they gave me. So I borrowed, I think, $60,000 from 2 other individuals that have known me for years. They were partners of mine. And they said, heck yeah, if we can get in this deal. I gave them a good amount. And after we closed, I paid them all back at 10%.
So you had how many partners in this deal?
Well, so we had about 34 investors or so.
Okay.
A good amount of those ended up being, some people that wanted to get involved from the KP standpoint just to get that on their resume because it was a Fannie Mae loan.
Okay.
I want to say probably 10 of those just to
now
really
KP basically key principal. Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. And
satisfy the net worth on the note.
Okay. Yeah. And guys, when you're dealing with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, there are net worth requirements. If you take down a $13.5 million property, what does that work out to? What is the net worth requirement?
Right at 13.5, you got to have enough to satisfy the loan. But then your closing liquidity is usually 3 months of working capital. And so you're looking at, anywhere from $150,000 to probably $250,000 liquid. Now, once you close, that all goes away. So that's, and of course it's non-recourse. So not a big deal, but it's definitely a hoop to jump through.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So was it stabilized when you bought it?
It was. And actually what's funny is it was, 95% occupied. It's one of those deals where the manager may have been stealing some money on the side, doing this and that. And so we actually took over the property at our collections were right at $170K a month.
Mm-hmm.
We hit last month, I want to say we hit just shy of 230.
Wow.
And so
good for you.
So we're
what a home run.
It's actually on the market right now.
You're selling it. Wow.
Well, bird in the hand, right? So
I don't, not me. I'm not a seller. I'm a buyer. I like to hold.
My issue is we bought it at 7.5 cap around in there. We're probably looking at a high 5, really low 6.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of bird in hand.
It's about 11 million. We'll have by anywhere from 150 to 180% return just on the investors in less than 2 years. So, when you look at that kind of a thing, I look at it and say, well, what are the economic prevailing conditions right now? The only place I can see a C-class asset going up that's in the 70s in Arlington, Texas, is that cap rate going up. I mean, they're so compressed in Dallas right now that I just don't know. I mean, it's a great cash flowing asset, but when you're sitting on a extreme amount of liquidity or of equity like that, it's kind of hard not to give your investors back.
No, I understand, and to have that liquidity back to capitalize on this upcoming contraction as well is not necessarily a stupid move either. So, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So awesome. So now that was one you guys didn't do that together, you and Tim. What was the first deal the two of you did together?
So Tim came on board maybe September of last year. He flew out. Actually, summer of last year he flew out, and we had an investor function. And Tim kind of saw this organic movement over the years, and he had just retired from Great Wolf as a chief operations officer, so timing wasn't really right for him. And I'll let Tim kind of dive in here in a second, but he came out and was at that investor function, and I'll let him take it from here.
Okay, but before Tim, let me just interject one thing, because please describe this investor function, because I want my listeners to hear how you go about pulling your investors in, keeping them happy. Describe the event.
First thing is communication. We are extremely, averse to not communicating with our investors. Good, bad, indifferent. We put it out there.
Right.
Twice a year, we have investor functions where we rent. At this first place was at a hotel. Had heavy appetizers and cocktails, and it was basically just a meet and greet to say, hey, we weren't soliciting anything. We didn't even have anything under contract. It was more about getting in touch with those people, and just as you said earlier, is making those relationships, because you don't invest in the deal, let's be honest. You invest in the person. I mean, that's really what it is.
It's all about the relationship.
Yeah. And so we had that function then, and Tim came out. Unfortunately, we got one next month. We rented a house on Lake Travis in Austin. And so
nice.
We try and get around a little bit to where the bulk of our investors are and just do it because we enjoy doing that. And education is a huge keystone in what we do. And not only for
Do you do a presentation at these things?
We haven't. Usually I'll just get up and say a few words and just thank everybody. But we're, some people are now that we've got investors east to west coast are saying, hey, is there a PowerPoint presentation? I'm like, well, I guess what we're going to do now is what we've looked at is saying, here's what our fiscal year 18 goals are. We're putting some software platforms in place. We've started looking at limited service hotels, things like that, where we can draw from Tim's strength also in operations.
Okay, so you think you're considering other sectors. Okay.
Absolutely. With his contacts in the space, there's just a lot of opportunity, and we'll go at it slowly, but we may try something in the future to see.
Interesting. All right. So anyway, Tim, please tell us about your initial experience here.
Yeah. So, Tom's right. It was exactly 13 months ago now. I went down, sat through the investor conference and seminar, and quickly figured out, Rod was going to retire. I've had an extremely fortunate career. I was in the right place at the right time, and thought that I was going to spend time on the golf course. But my wife saw me around the house and said, "You got to go do something."
That was the end of that.
Yeah, that didn't last very long. So, I've always been interested in real estate and have been following Tom, listening to Tom, and investing with Tom. So went down and I quickly figured out that Tom needed organizational help. He needed somebody behind the curtain to help build structure and blocks and the foundation. So we quickly said, you know what, I think we've got something really unique here. And started to, build the foundation. And Tom's right. And we're doing a lot of interesting things at the Austin meeting. We will have a presentation. I think it's important that we talk to them about our 2018 top line business goals. And also what are our key metrics? How many deals does it take to look at to actually get one in contract? We figure that we have about a 2% success rate out of every deal that comes across our desk. So, we're keeping track of.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, we're keeping track of all those stats, which are very interesting. And one of the big initiatives that we're doing is putting an investor management platform in place so that our investors will be able to go to napolicap.com, log in, and be able to track the performance of their investments, have all their documents electronically saved and filed, et cetera. So we're pretty excited about some of the pieces that we're putting in place.
No, it's great. Use technology to help with your communications with your investors and their comfort level. Love it.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I think small to grow big. And that's a little bit in contrast with Tom always thinks very big. So that's why we work really well together. He has the big ideas and I think of the small pieces to grow big, and it works really well together.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. My acquisitions team is very similar. I've got James that's out there with blood dripping from his teeth looking for deals. And then then he brings the deals. He's all excited. And then Amanda's over here with the bucket of cold water that she regularly throws on James when she's performing due diligence and looking at the deal. So it's a great balance. I mean, it's a great balance. There's no question. Well, let me ask you guys this. What advice, a lot of my listeners are aspiring real estate investors. They may have some single family, they may have a duplex or a triplex, but they want to do what you're doing. What advice would you give them?
Oh, I get asked this a lot. It's always the same answer I give.
All right, well, good.
Don't stay on the sidelines. I know it's hard to think duplex, fourplex, to think beyond that, but really the work is no different. It really isn't. And the rewards are potentially much, much more with what I perceive is a lower risk too. My risk tolerance for an apartment complex is much, much, much better than for buying a duplex or anything else. I mean, you talk about management fees, you talk about, economic vacancy that's sitting there. It's just, you have to get off the sidelines. And whether that's investing with somebody passively, becoming a key principal, or doing whatever you want to do in that realm, just take some money and go do it. It will force you to get an education. It really will. Right. You have skin in the game. You buy a lot in Longview, Texas for $30,000. Yeah, there'll be a lot of sleepless nights, but you'll force yourself to make something happen if you've got that perseverance and that drive anyway.
Just do it. Like Nike says, just do it.
Yeah.
I just saw another quote by Nike. It said, just do it and then do it again. I do these driving force clips about the psychology of success, because 80% of your success in anything really is your psychology. And I just did one on practice, and I found this quote is just do it, then just do it again. Anyway, I went off the rails there for a second. Do you guys have any mentors? Any people that you can look back on and thank for your success in this business, or is it all self-taught? Or
yeah, I don't. For me, I of course, those pivotal books that everybody reads. Sure. Robert Kiyosaki. I'm sure that's the number one go-to book. There's a couple of lenders that I've had here in the DFW area that when I was first coming to the area that were really instrumental in holding my hand, and not so much holding my hand, but showing me the ropes, saying bad thing to do, good thing to do. Should never buy in the hood. Just those top 10 commandments really helped shape. And it was good. And having somebody that, could back you off and saying, you might want to go there.
Right.
That's been
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what's next for you guys? What markets are you targeting? Is there a particular size, style? What's your target area and target size?
So we've stopped looking in Dallas about beginning of the year. It just wasn't happening. I mean, there's when you look at a C or a B true value add, we just can't. The risk is too high, because where interest rates are going. It's very predictable. They're not going to keep going down forever, and cap rates are going to follow eventually. We earmarked two places this year, and those were Indianapolis and Atlanta. Okay.
Yeah, great markets. Both great markets. Awesome. Okay.
We've spent a fair amount of time. I think I've made 6 trips to Atlanta this year. Right. We've closed on one 284 unit deal in North Atlanta. We actually have one under contract now that will be closing on the end of next month. And then we have a B asset that we're looking pretty hard at right now also, that's down in that area. So Atlanta's been great. We'd like to see 1,000 to 2,000 doors there, and then maybe move. We were in Indianapolis last week, just kind of sniffing around. Definitely a very different market for many different reasons. But more probably your style, a very long hold, long runway.
That's my thing right there. I hate selling.
Yeah.
My first interview was with Al Barras up at he's in the Detroit area, and they've got 45,000 doors. And he had a quote. His quote was, and I just stole it earlier in this interview, and that is, "I'm a real estate buyer, not a seller." And I'm sorry, but I hung on to that one. Now, of course, in 2008. that mentality got me crushed because I had 800 houses and it was a painful seminar for me, but I still believe in it.
Right.
But I will say this, back to the fact that you're selling that property. This is a great time to be in cash, no question. This is a great time. There are going to be exponential opportunities when the market contracts. There's no question there's a contraction coming. Real estate comes in cycles. Doesn't mean it's scary. It means there's going to be opportunity, and you can buy at the top of the market as long as you're focused on cash flow and you've got both eyes wide open. Agreed, guys?
Absolutely, it's all about underwriting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about, I mean, whenever we write underwrite a deal, and we've got actually another, I forgot to mention earlier, we've got another junior partner that we brought on that is our analyst, who's a CPA, is got a guy that spent a lot of time in private equity. But the way we look at things is a very modest 1% to 2% growth in any market. It doesn't matter. I'm never going to underwrite for 6%, 6 to 10%. And our economic vacancy is probably going to at least be 15%. You know,
good. No, that's conservative, but that's, when the market contracts, that could very well happen. So yeah. So let me ask you this: tell me about your team. You just brought on an analyst, so fantastic, great idea. What other members are on your team?
Tim, we've got Tim's. She's probably sitting there helping him in the background right now.
Yeah, she's actually across the hall here. So Mackenzie is our executive assistant. She was actually my former EA in my real job. She's the magic behind the curtain.
I know all about that. I've got Ron, and if I didn't have Ron, I'd be dead in the water. Good.
Exactly. So Mackenzie is your Ron, and then as Tom said, Abel's saying, what we love about Abel is that he came from KPMG and private equity.
And, I mean that's like they drink through a fire hose there. Yeah. So he's seen everything. That's a great find. Great find, guys.
He was in transactional services, so he and I speak the same language, especially since my former company was owned by several private equity firms. He's been unbelievable for our team. He's a young guy growing his career, so they've been good. And then we've got a couple other people that we're using that are on our team. Great securities counsel, which is very, very important.
Critical, absolutely. So guys, for syndications, you need a great securities attorney. And then I'm sure you've got a great transactional attorney as well for your contracts and whatnot.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Those two guys are on our team. They're very, very important. So we're growing, and that's the exciting thing.
Now you use you're not self-managing, correct? You hire local property management.
Correct. We do. Yeah, we hire all third party. We don't manage. We manage the management companies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a great way to do it if you're in acquisition mode. I'm a big proponent for self-management because you have to manage the management company anyway. But in your case, when you're busy, small team, you're lean and mean, I'm a proponent for hiring outside management.
Yeah, I'd be kidding you if it wasn't part of our longer-term strategies over the next 5 years.
You'd be crazy not to. I mean, you bring somebody in-house. Frankly, it just makes sense. You'll have better quality and more control. But again, and I've kind of relaxed my stance a little bit. I was pretty militaristic about self-management in the first early interviews in my podcast. But then I remembered when I go back and think about heavy acquisition time, you don't want to be sidetracked with toilets and stuff, management issues. You want to be focused on finding deals. So, okay, now let me ask you this. Let's final this thing out with a war story. And I think I typically say a victory story, but I'd say that first deal was definitely a victory story that had $50,000 a month increase in net operating income. Holy Toledo. So tell me about a war story. When did you guys get your butt kicked? One or both of you.
Well, I've got a couple of them, and I'll tell you the first one being I tried to reinvest what I tried to do in Longview, and there's another little town called Kilgore that's a little ways away, and I bought some more acreage over there. Okay. And I learned my lesson to never underestimate an HOA when you're trying to rezone a property. Bad underestimation.
Well, it's the same thing like your group of physicians. An HOA is a group of homeowners that have no life. They got nothing better to do but make your life miserable.
Right. It was. And the funny thing was we were going to build some very nice. We went from a condo type situation. Then we even got all the way down to single family homes, which were going to be nicer than the homes they lived in. It came. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. I was in the newspaper. I mean, I was in town hall meetings.
Nice.
You just can't even logically describe to a mob once they get their mind up. So never again will I rezone. Development, unless there was a bolt-on arm to the company, never again will I do that. And then I would say the second big lesson I learned with double and triple net commercial holdings, always know who your partner is on the other side. Know the company, vet the company, look at their financials, their strength.
You're talking about the tenant.
Correct.
Okay, so guys, just so those of you listening, when he's talking about triple net, a great example of that would be a built like a Walgreens or a CVS, where you own the building and you've got a tenant that pays everything. Okay, that's a triple net lease, and the most important due diligence function you do in one of those deals is you vet that tenant, because the whole deal is the tenant. And that's what you're talking about here. Was that the seminar? Okay.
Yeah. It is. And in East Texas, a lot of things get done on a handshake, unlike Dallas.
Okay.
I'll say it doesn't matter who they are, what their presence is. Always you want to look at the financials and who their backing is, right? So I'm involved currently with it's kind of a funny story. I mean, there's a politicians and a senator involved, and I'm just boy. Never again, no politicians for the rest of my life.
All right.
Yeah, and that's all I'll say about that.
All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate you guys taking your valuable time to talk to my listeners today. You've definitely added value. Let me ask you one last question. What quotes do you have on your wall? What quotes do you live by that push you to drive for success?
Oh, man, that's a good one. Great mentor in East Texas. In his best East Texas slang would say, if it's not a good deal for everyone, it's not a good deal for anyone.
Like it.
Live by that.
I like it.
Relationships are the cornerstone of this business and any business incentive. And doing the wrong thing not only is going to get you in trouble, but it's going to ruin a relationship. And you have to be realistic about what you're giving people, and not get bogged down, and don't be overzealous about the money you're making. Because if you've got a great product out there and you're giving people and educating and you're giving great returns, then that should speak for itself.
Well, sure. And it's all about integrity. Exactly. No question. It's all about integrity. So how can people get a hold of you guys?
I would say the easiest thing is probably our website, which is napolicap.com, NAPALICAP.com.
Okay. And we'll have that in the show notes for you guys.
Perfect.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for your valuable time. I appreciate it. And let's stay in touch.
All right, Rod.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys. All right. You bet. See you.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and then take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. For more resources to connect with us further, please visit our website at lifetimecashflowpodcast.com. Tune in next week for our next show.